that question. And as Tom stated, just a reminder to keep muted at all times. We are trying to deal with background noise and we want everyone to be able to ask their question. So please keep yourself muted for no interruptions. Our next questioner is Emily from Washington Township. Emily, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you. And thank you again for the time you're allotting to us today for this. I teach AP Government 11th grade students. We were actually watching the events unfold last week. We were watching the certification results, the speeches on the floor. I had 2 students in class. We're all at home again now. And I had the rest, similar to what we're doing now, Zooming in and chatting and, different students watching different news channels. We were sort of all sharing things. Since then, there's been a few concerns from the perspective of 11th grade students. We are right now covering the interaction between branches of government. So they were trying to look for examples of how are these branches interacting right now. Their biggest concern was the disparity they saw concerning race, which I know you addressed a little bit. But also these are students who will be voting within a year. So they had to go to their next class today. But if you had anything you would say to 16, 17-year-olds about what they saw and how they're feeling, what can I give back to them tomorrow when we meet again?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for being an AP government teacher. One of the things that we need is going forward, this is not a solution in the next 2 weeks, but we need to talk about the importance of civics education and history and government education in this country in the same way that we talk about STEM. And that's also something that I intend to work on over the next couple of years, because there are things Congress can do. Even though most public education is local, there are things Congress can do to encourage it. I'd be happy to come speak to your students at some point if you wanted to organize that on Zoom. I've done that quite a bit. It's like there's nothing that I find more interesting and fun than talking to kids that age who are studying government.
I appreciate that.
I sometimes feel like all this drama that we've had the last couple of years was staged to make your class more interesting. So they're getting an education right now that requires them to consider the foundations of our system of government, what the rules are, why we have these rules, stuff that we were taking for granted, which they are now realizing, and I hope you're imparting this, can't be taken for granted. We are the country we choose to be. We will have the rules that we choose to enforce, and it's on us. But at the same time, if I were speaking to them, I would also reassure them that this imperfect but still marvelous system that we've had for over 200 years, it held through this period. We had a president and a group of people who didn't want to accept the outcome of an election. And they tried their very best to persuade members of their party around the country to help them avoid the verdict of the people. And invariably, in state legislatures across the country, in local and county governments, local election boards, public officials all did their duty. Many of them were members of President Trump's party. Many of them voted for President Trump, strongly supported him. And when it came time to count the votes, they counted the votes and they followed the law. And when they came under tremendous pressure, including in some cases death threats, to find a few thousand extra votes in Georgia to recalculate, as the president urged.
That's a misconception, and
they said no. And then when it went to court, which is the president's right to challenge anything that he thought was irregular in court, every single court looked at the facts and said no, including judges who had been recently appointed by President Trump. There are very few countries around the world where that could happen, where public officials still almost invariably do their job and follow the law, even if the leader of their own political party is telling them not. And that, that held all the way through last Wednesday. And yes, there were members of the president's party who voted against their constitutional duty not to certify the election. But in the Senate, the vote was 94-6. So virtually every strong Trump supporter in the Senate said, no, it is our duty to certify, as much as we don't like it, that Joe Biden won. In the House, there was a larger group of people, some of whom told us because they were afraid for their lives, who voted not to certify. But still, we marched back into that room, even after this attack, and we finished our job, certified the election. President-elect Biden will be sworn in, and our democracy continues. Our institutions have held. So I hope, I hope as they learn from this drama, which is really interesting, that they come to that conclusion. It'll be up to them to come to it, obviously, but I hope that they do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Our next question comes from